with Intuitive You, and I am so happy to be here with this amazing guest. And I'm so grateful that you guys are here listening. And this woman came to me, man, out of the blue, pretty much last week.
Wearing blue too.
Yeah, it was another show that we were on together, and I had actually told the host to connect us all. And I'm like, wow, I love how things work out. When you put good back, you get good out. It's just amazing. So, thank you so much for being here. And if you just want to introduce yourself to our audience, that would be amazing.
Fabulous. Thank you for having me. And again, the way the universe works, you just have to kind of roll with it. My name is Dr. Cheryl Lentz. I am a college professor of 21 years. I teach in higher ed with doctoral students mostly. I also own my own business. I'm a professional publisher and a professional speaker. TEDx is in my wheelhouse, and I go where the world asks me to go and to serve in a way that makes the best and the highest good for everyone. And so that's why I'm here. So you called. I must have heard the calling, and here I am.
No, I love that. I know, I feel like since I was a kid, it's not that long ago. It was like 5 or 6 years ago when I was just like, okay, God, show me where to go. And it was like Thailand and then Bali and then, Eugene and then San Diego. You just kind of know because your intuition pulls you. And just to take a moment to connect with your intuition and where you feel that in your body, for everybody listening, that innate knowing, that pull forward towards something that you just know you're meant to do, right? So it's not necessarily the most exciting thing, but as you know, I was guided. One of my dear friends, she was like my second mom, passed. And I knew I had to go to her funeral. I absolutely knew it. And we traveled over 12 hours to get there, my parents and I. And it was worth every step of the way because I needed to be there for her children. She is still giving me messages, talking to me every day. And she was just like, get on that plane. My children.
Did you have that? You're like, I'm going, and you're talking, and there's nobody there that anyone can see. It's like, no, you don't understand. I got this.
I'm listening to something else.
Exactly. Never mind. It's okay.
Totally. Absolutely. And, it's just when we show up in service, we are always served. And so, as I was listening, there was a message that they shared, which God, so you can use the universe, you can use love, actually, if you want. But the message that was shared in the service is God is love. So, and to me, her name's Darla Moore, and she is love. And to have a footprint of love that you leave behind, that's something that I've always wanted to do. And to see somebody that is who she is was so beautiful. And it does, like we were talking before we went live, makes you really question and think, how do I want to approach each situation? I can do it with love and kindness. I can do it with anger and bitterness. But what is my footprint of love going to look like? So I'm wondering if you want to add anything to that, just because you are love as well.
Two things come to mind. I want to do the academic side first, because one of my business coaches has a phrase that's become mine. It goes, love is just damn good business.
Yes.
And we don't like to operationalize love in the boardroom. We can do it at home. We can do it in the community. We can do it at the church. We can't do it always at work because that's touchy-feely stuff. That's not. And I always remember the movie with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, You've Got Mail, when she's losing her business. And all Tom Hanks says, well, it's business. It's not personal. It's business. And her reaction was so elegant. It was like, but I'm tired of hearing that. And what does that mean anyway? Shouldn't business start by being personal?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that to me has always touched my heart. And then I met Steve Farber with his Love is Just Damn Good Business. And so that's my latest. I am now working on a project, I'll get it right yet, with the university called Project Kindness. And I was a little bit touchy-feely at first, going, do we really have to tell people to be kind to each other? And the answer is yes. Yes, we do. And here's why. When somebody tells us something, we have two options. We first take it in, and we have to acknowledge our humanness. And this is what you and I talked about a little bit. We are going to get angry for news we don't want, we don't like, we don't expect. And that's okay, because we are only in charge of what we do with those reactions, not how the world gives them to me. So we can't control what happens in the world. We can control how we react to it. That's tough. That's character. And so we have this idea, if we choose love, we can try and have the kindness conversation. That's all I've ever wanted, is to, under pressure, be grace and love and kindness. Do I do that all the time? Do I aspire to? Yes. And I get better at it every time, sadly, we're tested, because it's easy when things go right. That's child's play. It's not so easy when the world's going to hell in a handbasket and you're trying to just hang on. but you want people to remember either anger, bitterness, or grace and elegance. That's our choice. A hard one, not easy, but that's still our choice. And
Yeah.
that's hard work.
Oh, I love you so much. I so needed to hear that. So it just softens my heart because when you hear truth, everyone, your whole being is like, oh, thank you. I can relax because it feels right. It's true. It's authentic. It's real. And it's like that edge can soften, right? And in
Time tends to do that for us. And so eventually, that's what they say, time heals all wounds, even a broken heart. But I'm not convinced that we even ever truly heal from a broken heart. We find a place for it. It's part of who we are and our journey, not the ones we always like the most, but it has made us to who we are. We can't deny that. We have to acknowledge it, even though it was the painful part of our journey. And that's the hard part. And a lot of people like to avoid it. We talked about this. I like to put it in a box because we don't like to deal with painfulness. Everyone must, that's the Facebook effect, right? Everything's wonderful. I have the great house and the great car. Nobody's that happy ever. I don't care what you do. It's all acting. But when you dare to show your true side when things aren't going well, that you have the ability, it's like, yeah, the guy broke up with me. Yeah, somebody died. Yeah, I didn't get the paper. Yeah, 9/11 happened. I just spoke at a 9/11 thing about a month ago, and I remember how powerful that was to be able to look at the gift in tragedy. That's not a gift we want to open sometimes, and it's difficult to, but there is still that gift if we choose to see it that way.
and it's kind of like, okay, show me the gift. And I had
Exactly.
the thought when you were talking, actually, maybe it's actually easier to be kind. I know it is because when I've had situations before, I was thinking about an ex of mine who broke my heart. And that's actually when I opened my nonprofit because my heart broke open. Because I had a friend who actually told me, like sometimes God breaks your heart to open it. And so, for those of you that go to One Heart Global, it's oneheartglobal.co for the nonprofit. I literally say on the homepage, my heart broke into 1,000 pieces and spread its light across the world.
Ah, isn't that wonderful with it? Because that's the fragment of a prism, that it's not just one crack, it's many. Oh, that's beautiful.
And so now that helps, hundreds of children around the world, and hopefully more. We're working on building an orphanage for them. So I feel like in these smaller moments, though, too, right? You can say these big, grandiose things that we are doing. And my, moments of being tested is like, hey, those small moments of what do I say to somebody when they say something or do something mean to me? How do I respond with that love and kindness? And I do believe it's easier to be kind than not because whatever we put out, we get back, right? So, I mean, to the point of like even finding soap. So I'm staying at this hotel in Eugene, Oregon right now with my parents on the way back from the funeral. And the soap actually says, be kind, not even kidding.
Oh my gosh, so that is that, oh, I love that. I love that. But
Be
you have
kind.
but you have to look at those little messages in there because remember, life is that choice. And you can choose to be bitter or you can choose to be able to make that different choice and share your life. But those gifts are still part of who we are. And sometimes there is great things come in little packages. But here's the real secret. There's, I don't know if you're familiar with Napoleon Hill, but he's one of my mentors. As a man thinketh, so he is. And that means if we think we're going to have a tough road, we will. If we think we will have an easy road, we will. Either way, we're right. So, what is the choice you want to have? Because we create it. And most people, they want to see confirmation first, then they feel. You can do the reverse. You can choose to feel and then have confirmation. That's a whole lot harder, but we are in control. That's what the secret is all about.
Yeah, so I love that you said feel. So your intuition knows through feeling. So another funny example is, I'm like, okay, I need to get back to San Diego. I can take the earlier or the later flight. And in the middle of the night, I actually hear Darla's spirit talking to me like, get home as soon as you can. And I'm like, why? Like, I kind of want to stay here. One of my best friends lives here. Like, I'd like to spend the day with her. And it's like, no, get home as fast as you can. So I talked to one of the hotel he basically does like the shuttle service or they shuttle to the airport. And he's like, yeah, you do not want to take a shuttle. Like, tell me all the reasons why my intuition was right to go early. Cause I'm just, tell me why. But it wasn't until I felt this is right that you start getting the confirmation. So if you can trust your knowing of your intuition without knowing why, like I left a scholarship for college to go start a company. Like you don't have to know why, but just know that it feels right.
That's called fate.
Yeah, totally. And if it doesn't feel right, just stop and then wait till you can move into your center to what does, right? And what I
Exactly.
mean,
And we don't want to. We want it now. We want it hurry, 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 hurry. And we want a confirmation. Sometimes the answers have to come because you're asking the right questions. But a lot of people won't listen to that voice inside. So congratulations. You're willing to trust.
oh, yeah, that's the other thing because you don't always want to, right? Like it's kind of
Mm.
like the higher or lower self. I remember one of my old friends, he was like, what is the higher or lower self? Aren't we just one person? I'm like, yes, we are. But the higher self is going to be guided by love. And the, you could say lower ego self is going to be guided by fear, like you said, humanness. I almost want to say even greed.
Yeah, that's
Or
a
like,
human quality.
kind of wanting. Whereas if you go to the foundation of love and you're rooted in your heart, you're going to be guided by that higher self energy. And it's going to feel light, it's going to feel good. Um, so I think,
But the hard part is we have to get to that part, and that's the part that everyone wants the expert. They want to get to the Tootsie Pop in the middle, like that, thing is how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? You won't know until you actually go through the process. We don't want to go through the process because part of the process is change, part of the process is painful. If we can just look at it as a necessary part of growth, it's a different conversation than a, oh my God, it sucks to be me because it's the worst I've ever felt in my life. The feeling is still similar. It's how we define it is how we're going to go through it. Because even with your friend dying, not the best thing for you. You want her alive. I have a friend of mine who died when she was 52. I still carry her. I still go to her gravesite even years later. I haven't found a place for her yet because she's always here. But every time I hear her voice kicking my butt going, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, she's here, and I'm like, you're watching. And I can just see her sitting there with her arm going, I'll wait. But these are our guides. So
yeah,
you can see this as a positive opportunity to honor Darla and to continue your friendship, but it's going to be a little different. And a lot of people have that woo woo stuff and they don't buy it. She's there with you. She always will be.
it's almost stronger, to be honest. I hear it all the time. And I mean, she's one of my biggest fans, it's just amazing,
Exactly.
And
But
so,
not only your biggest fan, but someone willing to kick you in the butt when you need it if you're willing to listen, because she will protect you, but you're not always going to like what she has to say.
yeah, but she does it with love. And that is one of the most beautiful things, right? It's like to do it with love. It's the grace you talked about. She was the embodiment of grace and she still is that spirit of grace around as a guide now, right? And you know what's fascinating? I honestly have struggled with even sharing that I hear guides because it's like, do people really understand what that is? Do they think it's just woo woo? Maybe, because I kind of did when I heard it. But the
Oh, I do
truth,
too. I'm the college professor. I spend all of this stuff. I have to teach logic and scientific method and all those other stuff. That's not logic.
yeah.
That's love.
But
That's faith.
but why do you even listen to guides? Why do you even hear them? And this is what I taught like 10 years ago when I started the school. I remember telling Sai, he was my business manager at the time, I said, the difference between your guides and your mind, because your mind can be like a crazy making machine kind of. Your guides have an objective perspective. They can actually see above what your mind can see. So when you hear like your guides saying, like last night, and specifically Darla was speaking to me, take the first flight back. She can see everything that's going to happen. All the people affected, my parents, the people on the flight I'm with, who's going to pick me up, all of it, right? And so it goes to an objective yet higher perspective. And so if we can hear that instead of our mind, which is going to be more constrictive, and the way to get into hearing your guides is through your heart and your gut and that center point.
That was the hardest lesson my friends have been working on for years. It's like they would always say, and I never understood what they meant. Cheryl, you spend too much time in your head. You need to spend time in your heart. And all of a sudden, I mean, your head is all this practical and all this noise and all this stuff in the outside. Your heart is you. And so when I finally had to silence these voices, and it's not that I'm schizophrenic, but I would have to do things, and then I could hear my guides. They've always been there. The problem is I couldn't hear them because I was here. When you open your heart and you're really willing to go, and sometimes I remember the first one scared me because it was like this voice of God, and you're like, who's here?
Yeah.
Who's here? And I'm looking under chairs and we're thinking I have absolutely lost my mind. But when you start believing that and starting seeing things, more things happen, and you become almost like you've never been able to have glasses. Suddenly you put them on, you're like, there's a world that's been here the whole time, really? And you're ready for it. But it's a journey, and some people never get there. Never. So am willing to go on the journey, even though it sometimes scares a little bit Jesus out of me, but it's having the courage to take that first step, knowing your guides are ahead of you in the process. They're not above you or not below you. They just got there first. So it's so much easier to follow than it is to blaze your own trail. So why not ask them to make it a little easier for us so they can see what we can't see coming and maybe make it a little easier when we get there.
I love that. They can see what we can't see coming. It's also intuition, right? You can feel it in your body. So if you're not hearing guides right away, it's still that like your full body can kind of tell you, ooh, move away from this or towards that, right? Like you have that clairsentience.
I remember a feeling that I had, and I couldn't face it because I didn't know what it was. All I knew is I woke up in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden there was this god awful feeling, and it lasted for about 2 hours, and it was like, all right, somebody died, something bad happened. I couldn't, but I literally was going through this thinking that maybe there was something wrong with me. Remember I said in the break in there, we live our lives forward, but we understand them backwards. And so when I understood what that feeling was telling me, it all made sense. And it was like the power of that moment. First of all, the feeling got my attention because it woke me up out of a dead sleep to be able to say, is something important in your life is happening now? One of those life's defining moments. It was there. I didn't understand it in the moment, but I went with it. I've got enough training, I guess you could say now, to be able to explore it, even though it was painful. I had no idea, but I had to wait for the morning, and then the explanation came. And it wasn't one that I was expecting. I will tell you, it was even more painful when I discovered the why, but it was necessary. And it's been an interesting thing to experience. And that's the part that many of us, we don't want horrible experiences. We don't want painful, but it wasn't a bad kind of pain. It was this is an important life lesson you need to pay attention to. And the only way I'm going to get your attention is by making it this painful, because you won't hear it and you won't feel it any other way. And that sometimes is it's someone you like Groundhog Day, right? You get the same lesson over and over, and every time you get it, it gets louder and it gets louder and it gets more intense. It's like, how loud do I have to be before you get the 2x4 that bangs you over the head to be able to say, now are you hearing me? And you're like, oh, you've been doing that for a while. I haven't been listening. So I now try very hard that when I hear it the first time, I'm going, oh, okay, I got this. I'll do it. I don't always understand it, but I'll go with it because if it gets to the 2x4 and that horrible feeling, that means I haven't been paying attention. And that's really what our guides are having to ramp it up in order to get our attention. Yeah. So I encourage you to explore those feelings so that you don't have to get it to that level in order to get your attention.
Yeah, I've had that experience. I know another dear friend on our board has, and anybody listening, if you've had that. And I guess it's probably to have compassion for ourselves of like, man, because I think it's when it's like I was talking about, the lower ego side doesn't want to hear it, doesn't want to think it. And your higher self is like, well, hey, I'm higher. I can see more. And for me, you're like, no, I don't want to. But it's like,
no, you have this internal struggle all the time, because I like to tell my students all the time, it's like, God does a better job playing God than you do. Just want to let you know you don't want that job, but we so try to take over for him. And if we could just get out of our own way and remind ourselves that, yeah, this wasn't it. I have a very big event that I wanted to go to this coming up weekend, and it's not going to happen. Yeah. And it has been bugging me. And first it was a why, and we went through that game. And then it was to say, there's a reason I'm not supposed to be there, even though it is not yet a reason I understand, but it's difficult because that's the ego talking. Well, I want to be there, and I want to be there in the pretty dress, and I had my, planned on this for years, and now it's not going to happen. And now it's like, oh, what a loss. But if you reframe it but you weren't supposed to be there, that's the message I'm getting. And then it's okay, namaste, I get it. Thank you. That's the gift, because that's where I'm not supposed to be, or where I'm supposed to be. But I know there's a little part of me that's like, but I wanted to go.
Yeah. And to trust the bigger picture. I think that's it,
Well, it's just not time, or it's not the right place. And you said at the beginning of this, you go where you're asked to go, and you serve in service of those who need. I don't need to be there. That's ego speaking because of a specific thing that I want. When we give it over to the universe and we surrender, then we do what the universe needs in service of love. And that's the hard part. So I still struggle with it, even though I'm like, yeah, okay, but I still wanted to go, darn it,
Oh, I love your just authenticity, full. Choosing love, yeah. Again, in the moments of pain. So actually, that's what I was going to ask you, is like, why on the earth do we need pain? Like you said, probably to get the lesson, right? Be like, hey, we've tried. And so now, because I know I've been there.
Here's something that I think is going to be very trite, but it's very true. If you don't have pain, you don't know what the absence feels like, that you can't understand happiness. You need to have the dichotomy to be able to know what good and bad is. If we don't have bad, we don't know good. If we don't know good, we don't know bad.
That's true.
And that is such a, well, why can't we just get rid of that emotion? Because good and bad are relative terms. The idea, maybe, think about the 9/11, and I know this is a difficult point, is how many people were late that day, that they missed it because they got stopped by a bus. The kid was late and throwing up, and they didn't make it to the tower. They didn't know what was going to happen in that moment, but it was the grace of God that they didn't go there, and now they are walking today, rather have gone through that tragedy. We can't make sense of all of the whys, why some were there, why some weren't. But that delay that we were initially, I can't believe I'm in traffic, I'm going to be late for work, and the kid was sick, and blah, 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 blah. And we get there, we're like, oh my God, I will never complain ever again, because that being late, that gift of annoyance, that gift of the love of family, that gift of that child who needed me more in that moment saved my life. And
yeah, it's fascinating you bring it up. So I had a very, very dear client of mine whose husband died in 9/11. And fascinatingly enough, right along with our theme, she took that and she decided to create kindness. So she has a company called Cosmina. I think it's COZEEMA. And she has these little hearts, and she gives hearts, and they used to just come together in circles, and she just created this community of kindness. And now she's a TEDx speaker and author, and it's again what you do with it, to your point earlier. So,
and that's hard, because when we're in that moment, the last thing, we're in traffic, the kid's thrown up, you have 2 different color shoes on, you didn't pick up the dry clean, your boss is going to be mad and you don't understand how the dynamic has shifted to be able to get there. But if you shift, you can't change the world. But the minute you shift, somehow the world changes.
And you can influence it. You can influence it.
You don't have to settle for the kid thrown up. You can say, oh my God, thank you so much. That's great. And now I know you're not going to have a serious illness because I was able to do all of the things. When we listen and we frame it appropriately, it becomes a good thing, or at least a thing. But bad and good are relative. We put the context and the labels on them. So don't label it. Yeah. Just accept that everything that comes to you is for your highest good. I think of my guardian angels. Mine are permanently at happy hour. And I used to fight them all the time. So you know what I finally did? I just pulled up the bar stool next to it and said, great, what are we drinking? And they're just like, she gets it. And I'm like, if you can't beat them, join them. They are doing this for my high good. And they like all the humor and the smart aleck things that happen. So I finally was like, hey, Norm, slide your ass over. I'm coming to have there. Grab me a beer. And it was the weirdest thing that now I go in there. It's like, so now I laugh with them. And every time they do crazy stuff, I'm like, all right, it's happy hour somewhere. Let's roll.
Yeah.
So that's different than getting mad every single time they put roadblocks in my way, and I would just get so angry. I'm going, seriously, boys and girls, this is what you find amusing? Really? You don't have enough time on your hands? And so, but it was a matter of reframing it. The same stuff has happened. The same stuff didn't change.
Yeah.
I changed.
Yeah.
And so now I have some angels at happy hour, and I see them far more often than I'd like to some days. But, hey, if it's 5 o'clock somewhere, grab a beer and let's go,
Right? Well, I just love what you said. Join them, right? Rather than fight, join, because it's like, part of the reason I'm on this station is I really believe in the thought of oneness. And I'm not always necessarily here for myself, but for you guys, everybody listening. I believe that there is service in bringing the message of oneness, intuition, and love. And I've asked myself before, how do we stay in oneness when we feel hurt or somebody's hurt us?
That's tough.
And I think you've given us the answer, though, at least part of it is it's acceptance. Join what is, accept it, and then respond with love. Because if you're fighting, you're going to be in anger, because I know I've been there,
what resists persists. You keep doing it, the God's going to keep getting it, you get more of it. That's the last thing you want to do. So it's counterintuitive. Stop it. And we have a different result that happens. That's tough to do because we like being mad sometimes.
Yeah, or maybe like the getting what we want thing, right? The ego. But it's like the piece of I'm just kind of feeling it as I'm talking, of just the acceptance of okay, I don't like it. I wish it wasn't this way. But I am going to accept it because it is. And that is the oneness because it is. And then how can I work with my brothers and sisters in love? Because fighting them or fighting opinions or whatever, right? It's when I say fight, I think it's just even energy, right? Just a
that's exactly it. That's all it is what we label it. It's just energy. Yeah. So do you want oh my gosh, I didn't expect this. This is wild. It certainly derails all the plans I had. But if I get mad in there, I'm going to shut down. But if I ask for the grace to open myself up and say, all right, what you got? What is this going to do? Because I missed this, wasn't paying attention. Now there's this whole matter. And it's always better than we hope for if we can do that shift. Because here's what COVID did for us. People aren't going to like this. So hang on, guys. Don't bolt on me, but just hang with me for a little bit. COVID forced you to do something that you wouldn't do on your own. It's called forced compliance. We don't like to be told what to do. So the universe decided, well, we're going to make you. And so I don't know if there are lessons we as a collective have missed, but this little tiny little bugger changed our world by forcing us to do things we might have been doing all along. I'll give you an example. I'm a higher ed professor. I teach undergrads, grad, mostly doc students. My world didn't change. On Friday, when all of the universities had to get out of the campus and go online, I was already there. Most of us in higher ed who teach online, our world didn't change. We just did more of it. And I actually felt a little guilty because the world is suffering for skills they don't have that I do, that all I did was do more of it come Monday morning. And we tried to shift that narrative going, what do you need to know that I do that can make your lift easier? But it was tough for some people because they're like, oh, this is different. It's like, no, it isn't. We've had online education for more than 30 years. We have people who've been trained in this. You can't train someone instantly overnight to do that. We had the ability, and when we chose to see it in love, we published a book in less than 2 weeks, or actually less than 48 hours. We came up with the idea on Friday. That book was in everybody's hands by Monday morning at 6:30 a.m. So they had a roadmap that those of us who know how to do this, they didn't have to reinvent the wheel. It was going to take them 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Many of them are still doing that. Wow. So the question is, you didn't like COVID because COVID made you uncomfortable because it forced you to do things that wasn't your choice. That's sometimes the universe giving us a little nudge going, yeah, if you won't do it, we'll do it for you. Mm-hmm. We don't like that. I had that happen to me in college. I didn't like it. I railed against it. And it changed my life for 30 years. Watch my TED Talk. It's pretty magical when you look at all of the things I could have done and chose not to. And that's what most people do, is we choose to, oh, if I don't see it, I have to do this COVID. I know some people who decided it was retiring and they put in their papers when we needed them most. We don't need you sitting on the sidelines. We need your gifts. We need you in the game. We need you in the fight. And a lot of folks sat on the sidelines because they were scared. They were fearful. They didn't know what to do. It is our responsibility. Even if you do something wrong, do something. Care for another human being. Smile with them. I used to do weekly videos that had nothing to do with my teaching. It had everything to do with connection. Another human being is valuable. So get in the fight because you don't want the universe to force you. You want to make that as a choice where it's always an option. There's a difference. We don't like people telling us what to do. We like to be invited. So invite others to follow you because if not, your world will force you to, and you won't like it. So don't give it the option. Sorry, tough message.
Well, it's just so beautiful. And we really just met, but I told you I really want to dive into a conversation more about my second book on the universal language of love, because I believe that is the language. If we can be it, we can speak it. And there might be a few chapters that we might even need to write together in the beingness, because it isn't just words, it's actions and it's the vibration that then we can shift. That's what I mean by the influence, where, I hear what you're saying. There are certain things that maybe that people have told us that we have to do. We actually don't have to, right? There might be.
And many people didn't, and their businesses went out of business as a result. There are consequences.
And also opportunities.
So yes, that's it. I'm busier now than I was before. And I felt a little guilty because people are like, you can't be happy in COVID. I'm like, why not?
No, so my business soared too. And so how else can you think about what can you do differently? If you're in a job or a position that you don't like, how can you get yourself into an empowered place to do what you want and serve the people in the way you're meant to? And so I do think, the One Heart global mission is, okay, how can I be in my heart and share my gifts, right? And so I don't believe you're forced to do anything right now. You have choices. And can you go to
You do have choices, but a lot of people saw it as COVID saying, we don't have the choice if you want to stay alive. And the answer is it was a very rock and a hard place choice that we had to shift, or our world just doesn't look the same anymore. But it's not the first time our world has done this. And a lot of people suggested it worse. We've had pandemics since 800 BC. When the pandemic first hit, I took a class because I was curious. And I was amazed that we are reinventing the wheel that we don't have to. So why are we continuing to do when others know more than us? And this is ego speaking. When you can get out of your own way and ask for help and to choose a different path forward out of love, out of kindness, out of helping your fellow man, that's not a bad place to be, but a lot of people are afraid of it. So can we soften it a little bit? Can we look at the opportunity that COVID gave us? It's all how we frame it. Most people are like, ah, it was awful. Was there? It's like, maybe that's one way to look at it. Or you could see it as the greatest gift you've ever had. It was a gift for me because of how I chose to see it. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't always easy. I can't tell you that shot. I don't want those 36 hours back because I was a problem child getting through the vaccine. But it was still a choices. And I think COVID's forcing us to make some different choices because here's the other thing, you can choose to do nothing. That's a choice. And I get really frustrated with people who sit on the sidelines and say, oh, well, I'm going to play the victim because life happened to me. No, no. Life happens to you, or it doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. Change your languaging. There is a lesson that we all have. Some of us got it, some of us are still looking. Let us help you find the message and you'll turn your world around.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
magic.
I think it's see from the heart. How can you see through the lens of love, right? So then your world softens, right? And you can see the light, you know?
Well, here's the thing about friendship and connection. And you and I had a little bit of this before we started talking today. Life's going to happen. And some of the things that we have around our journey aren't really pleasant things. But I guarantee you, when you have a connection, and I'm hoping that I was able to serve this for you today, that
Yes.
it makes your lift a little bit easier when someone else in the world is holding your hand through it.
Yeah.
They're at your bedside. They know that it's going to be rough, but they'll dry your tears. They'll give you a hug. They'll hold your hand. They'll walk with you. And if it gets really bad, they'll carry you.
Yeah.
But the fact is, you don't have to do this alone. And many have tried and failed. So I have a whole network of people that I call. But the hard part is I have to call. And that is the most vulnerable I have ever been when I am in my weakest, to have anyone see me under those conditions, to be able to say, I need you. That's a hard lift because we potentially face the rejection of them saying no. And some will. Hopefully your inner circle will love you despite your warts and bad hair days and whatever it is in your foot in your mouth and all the other things that we do because they love you anyway. I have a college roommate that we went to homecoming this past Saturday. I don't see her as often as I like. I love her dearly. We've been together more than 30 years since college. We met junior year and we've been besties ever since. That takes hard work to keep a friendship that long, just like a marriage. We haven't always seen eye to eye on everything, but when we're together, it was magical. It was wonderful to see. It was her birthday on top of it all, and I got to treat her so well that we finally had our day together, and it was wonderful. And yeah, there was a football game going on in the background too, but it was important that we were together. That's what COVID needs to be the lesson here. It's connection. You can go through life and be bitter and fit, or you can join your angels at happy hour and have them pour you a beer. That's
Yeah.
the choice. I like to be around people. I like to do, but I know how difficult it is. And this is even hard for me to say when I have to ask for help because I don't want the public to see me at my weakest moment. And I want to do those moments with grace, with elegance, and with dignity. And it's tough when you're hurting to do that and people watch everything you do. So let that journey be worth watching.
That's so beautiful. I love that. I just, yeah, it's so beautiful. It's like I saw this image of just like oh, I think our computer froze for a second. Of just like a stage, like an actress acting, right? Going to be like,
Yeah.
how are you going to run it? Yeah,
And that's
absolutely.
tough because that was when I had to do my TED Talk, and everybody's like, oh, that TED Talk's for Dr. C. It's like, nope, that was Cheryl, pure, vulnerable, and raw. And I remember, matter of fact, there's a flub in there, and it's really funny. So I got in my head because I was sitting on stage. This was a dream of mine for 10 years, and I'm in halfway through the TED Talk, and I'm standing on stage, and I got in my head and going, I'm really here, and I'm really doing this, and I'm trying to shut up my head so I can finish my talk because I can't do both simultaneously yet. And I just remember that feeling, and I just want it, and I can still recreate it now of going, wow, when you have a dream come through, it's powerful. But you first got to dream. And many of us don't want to dream because we know getting there is going to be tough. That was a 10-year lift for me and a lot of rejections. And it was difficult on that stage when I first got there. The emotions, the rawness, the fighting for every word so that I could make it in there. And now I look back on that going, yeah, that's as vulnerable as it gets. And that's hard to do because we want to be polished. We want to be, how I started out the meeting, clam gal and everything, complete control. Mm-mm. The world wants to see you when you're your most vulnerable. That's authentic leadership. And that is as difficult as it comes to have grace and elegance during the tough times, to lead through the darkness. You will get there, but you have to lead yourself. And it's not easy. Mm.
So funny on this trip back, we stopped to the actual house where I was born. And my dad was like, Abby, you were born on a really like rainy day. Like it was pouring rain, like dark, rainy, cold, right? And then I just believe all babies are lights of the world, right? So like this light being born into the world. And like if we can think of ourselves as that light already within us in our hearts, like containing that, all that we need, that candle, that light, however you want to think of it, it brings me back to just the message of one heart global. So when I say that, I mean, by the way, all this stuff has come through me, right? One heart global. I'm like, okay, but what does that really mean? To me, it means how do you stay in the heart of love for yourself and everyone and feel the oneness? But it also,
Especially when the world is going wrong. You've had some things happen to you. I've had some things happen to you. How do you feel that when what you're perceiving is not the greatest thing ever in the world, not what you would have wished for? And it's hard to be one when you're angry. Anger and oneness cannot exist simultaneously. Anger is a distance, it separates us, it divides us. So trying to, in that moment when your dog passes away, your best friend passes away, you lose the love of your life, you have a failing member, whatever it may happen, and to still think, dear Lord, please allow me to use this as a beacon of light and hope for others, even though it's in my darkness. That is a hard prayer to say.
yeah, no, amen, sister. I feel you. Yeah.
So the question is, how do you do it again when life going, fun and the party's going and you're the life of the party, easy peasy.
Yeah.
It's the character that steps up that few people will want to do, and few people do not want to be on stage. It's the hardest part of my training I've ever had. Is it's easy when the event is over and I can talk about it because I'm no longer, it's about my story. It's
Right.
when you can talk about it when you're in your story,
Oh,
that the
wow.
emotions are raw, that becomes a very difficult lift that many people will not even tackle because it's painful. It's horrible. You guys are going to see me as I've even met you yet. It's like, oh my gosh, what are they going to say when I am at my most emotional? And I stopped hiding it years ago. This is who I am. This is my light. And I think for many, they're like, wow, we'd love to have that light during dark moments. It took me years to figure that out because I was not always the light and I wasn't always Susie Sunshine. Ask my friends. Many of them were like, God bless her. We've been waiting for a decade. Welcome back to the party, Missy, because I used to be the life of the party. I wasn't for a long time. Matter of fact, and this will scare some of your guests a little bit, I found myself in a wheelchair for 9 months.
Wow.
And I decided that two things were going to happen. Either I was going to see the world from that wheelchair because I was not going to stay at home doing it, or I was going to get myself out. And I did, and I am not going back because it is all about choice. But when you are the darkest you've ever been and there's nobody in the darkness, you become best friends with yourself because nobody was going to rescue me. There was no Prince Charming coming on a white horse. I rescued me. Hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And that was about 5 years ago. And I have not been back in that wheelchair and I am not going back.
Wow. Oh, congratulations. That's a miracle, sister. Yeah. Yeah. To the
But that
point.
was my choice because I could have stayed there and the doctors were perfectly content to let me stay there because they had no answers for me. And so the point was I could have accepted my fate. And I said, hell no, I have a life to live. And if I'm going to, then, and I actually went to a business conference and I remember dancing on the floor in a wheelchair, everybody, secret
Wow.
knock. It was amazing. People were like, well, hell, sister, if you're willing, we are. And we had a great time. And I think that was the beginning of the healing because people accepted me for who I was at that moment, broken. And the universe brought me to my knees, but it was a long road back. And now I said, it's like, it's easy to sit here as the glam gal and you could see me, dance at parties and hit the party. I wasn't there. I was in that wheelchair, dark and broken. So welcome to the light and dig your way and fight your way out because it's really cool on the other side.
I can feel it as we're talking, like a lift in my heart. Like I literally feel this golden white light, like lifting out of my heart and like lifting me out of my own sadness. Like, wait, there is a lightness because it's actually in the feeling of feeling love inside. It's the
Because we've
connection.
done it. You see the victory when you've done it. We don't want to go through it because we don't want to have to do it. But you have that voice inside of you. It's always choice. I could have stayed in that wheelchair and I'd still be back in Albuquerque in the wheelchair in a really dark place. But instead, I fought for it and I did it mostly alone with friends at a distance. There was no one here locally. And so now that people look, they're like, what's different about you? And I just kind of chuckle. I'm like, well, I'm glad you can see it because I believe that I am magic. And part of that was simply a belief in myself. And it's the Winnie the Pooh, right? You're stronger than you ever saw possible. I didn't ask for this, but I was able to rise to the challenge. But it was years. I'm telling you guys, it's not an easy thing. This is not hours. This is not minutes. This was years of a lot of hard work. And when I had a friend who hadn't seen me in a long time, she goes, by God, you finally did it. She goes, we've been waiting for you. Welcome back. I mean, I cried in that moment knowing that she had been waiting. And one of my guides, who was not always my biggest fan, she gave me that tough love. And she goes, you want to sit there? Then sit there. I'll call you when you get out of your wheelchair. And that's sometimes some tough love that we need. So you've got to look at what is the technique. And I kept expecting someone to rescue me. And when no one came, the message I got was like, well, what are you going to do about it? That why, right? It's like, well, you're going to sit here. And that was the voice. I'm like, who is this? It's like, you have choice. But even after that voice, it was like 6 months later before I finally decided, all right, we're going to do this. But it was a long road back. And I'm still not finished. I think I have a whole hour. So when you say that, I'm going, that's the message, is to have others going, if I can do it, I'm no one special. I promise you that it is simply a choice, a difficult one, but a choice. And so, but I didn't do it alone necessarily, even though my friends were at a distance. You're going to have to find that inner strength. And it's not always a really easy part of the journey, but it's so well worth it that I can look at me going, who is that woman? Because that's not who she was just 5 years ago. So.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I remind myself it's within all of us, in each moment, right? Like, what are we choosing?
Well, and that's it. You said something very important. In every moment, this is not one choice you make. You choose it in this moment, and then the next moment, and then when your dog dies, and when you get the bill, and every single moment, these are just a whole combination of little choices. The problem is we might do choice one, we might choice two, and then we stop. And I'm embarrassed to tell you that when the going got tough, I stopped because it just got too tough and I couldn't go anywhere. It's like it was easier to sit in that chair than to do anything about it initially. And that's the hard part, is we tend to, and that's part of what I speak about, is fail faster, succeed sooner. We don't like failure, but failure isn't failure if you get up one more time than life knocked you down. But there were a lot of times I stayed knocked down for a long period of time because I didn't like it. But you asked something, that legacy, choose in every moment. How is the world going to remember me? I didn't want the world to remember me in the wheelchair. You will never see any wheelchair pictures on my Facebook group ever. But I almost wish there was at least one, because that would have told you I would have been proud enough in that moment and vulnerable enough to say, I am doing this. But I didn't want anyone to know. Oh, I take that back. I was at graduation in a wheelchair once. I don't know if anyone has any pictures of that, but I didn't want anyone to know. I was embarrassed.
Yeah.
We like people to see us like this.
Yeah.
We do not like people to see us when at our worst. And that was as low as I got. But
look at you now,
yeah,
radiant and
glowing. Yeah,
glowing.
exactly. I am almost the life of the party all the time. I choose to be able to go out. And even in COVID, guys, here's how I did COVID. My friends know me this. The longer the dress, the longer the day. I wore my designer dresses during COVID, even though if I saw no one. I pulled out my long gowns on Friday night for happy hour. And there's Facebook pages of it going, if I went, and I'm single. And so there was no dates to go out in COVID. So I still had my long gown, did my hair and everything. And the only thing I didn't do were the heels. I draw the line at heels. If you don't have to wear them, I ain't doing it. So, but I did it. My Facebook page is full of all kinds of things and my designer dresses. And even now it's like, baby, I'm back. And so, but I will give you a line. The longer the dress that pulls out of the closet, the longer the day. So remember that.
How funny. That's awesome. Wow, look your best. What
Absolutely.
I'm is I promised everybody what we would talk about is how life can become so easy and graceful when you're following your intuition and you're connected to the love of the universe, which is what we're talking about, but how the results come naturally. So, Sonia Choquette is somebody I trained with, and then she endorsed my Miracle of You program. And she always said that love is the best marketing tool. So that's how I started my business.
I love
right?
that. Yeah, it is.
Have some of the most great clients ever, and they're just coolest people on the planet because it's from that love. So what I want to get back to is how everybody can click into that business and personal success coming to them easily because they're in alignment with love and their intuition. Because I'm telling you, when you're truly in alignment with intuition, like I just talked to one of my other students who finished the program. She's like, Abby, everything's just popping. I'm like, yeah, because you're in alignment. And so how can we share with everybody listening? And I'm sure you all have, things you can share as well, which I need to open the chat. I'm so sorry about that.
I've been watching the chat actually in the recording. There are some chats that are going on.
Very cool.
I think the hardest choice you're going to have to make is exactly what we talked about right when we first started, is do you react to life or do you lead life? because most people will say that this makes me happy, therefore I smile. The feeling happens, then I feel happy about it. Then the event happens. I get what I want, I'm over the moon. That's not how it works. The opposite. You choose to be happy first, then the things cascade. So if you're waking up in a crappy day, I will give you one of my secrets. Well, actually two. The two one is I go into my and I pulled out the designer dress today. It's like I want to be on my game. I don't feel the same when I'm in jeans and gym shoes or shorts. I'm sorry. I feel great when I'm in a designer dress. I feel even better when I'm in the romantic part of it, the long gown and I do the whole thing, the gloves, the whole 9 yards. But there are times where I'm not feeling it and I want to and need to before the event happens. So before this happens today, I have my theme song. I have music that Alexa just plays from the rafters.
Nice.
And that's the part where I remind myself of who I am. That's the love. That's the feeling first. Then the day happens.
Yeah.
Most of us have the day happens, then we feel it. You want the alignment that you're talking about? You've got to choose that feeling. It's like, I choose to have an amazing day. I am going to be sexy and beautiful, or whatever it is you're going to say. Then it's going to happen. But most of us don't. We react to whatever we are when we wake up. If that were the case, oh, honey, you wouldn't be seeing her here today. Let me tell you, it's rainy, it's cold, it's miserable, and yet all I see are rainbows and unicorns. Why? Those are the glasses I chose to put on today. I want love. I want to see that part. But when I don't and don't feel it because I wake up and I might be hurting a little bit, change the voice track.
Yeah.
That's the thing to do. But most people, we feel or we see what's going on, then we react, and then we feel. Turn it over. Choose the feeling. Then the rest of your day pops. You're like, wow, what an amazing day. And it's a Monday, right? I mean, I'm not a big fan. Amazing things happen on Mondays, but I really don't care for Mondays until I decided going, no, every day is going to be a Friday. And so, but you got to work at it. It's a skill. And that's not a skill we just pop out of bed at Susie Sunshine. So you got to work at it. So work at it and then make your choice.
And I think just trusting your intuition, right? That is where life does become easy because your intuition knows it is that higher part of you. And so then success in business and life can come to you because you're following that higher alignment, like we talked
about. It can't not come to you, right? I mean, that's the whole idea that what you put out with light, light will repel darkness. That's just how it works. You can't have darkness when the light's on. Right. So always be the Motel 6 and keep your light on no matter how dim. Right. Make sure in other days it shine, and the days you hit, right? You are the Midas touch. Everything goes your way, and you wonder, how did I do that? You made that choice because success, and then you're suddenly going, man, I just want to wake up. I pop out of bed most days going, I can't wait to see what's in store for me, as opposed to, oh my God, it's Monday. I don't want to go. I want to hide. Either way, you're right. So I think it's far better to turn the music up and start dancing, pull that dress out. Let's go.
Totally, there's something loose going on in the back.
Seriously, I'm telling you, I'm magic. That's just how it works.
You really are, for sure.
Oh, it's fabulous in there. But that's a choice because you attract that. I'm waiting for you to hear my theme song in the background, and that'll really be, the magic of the universe in there, because when you hit it, you just kind of smile going, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That works.
Yeah. So. That's so awesome, man. I love that here. So if anybody else wants to type in the chat, if there's any question or anything you want to add, feel free. Thank you so much, Gary, for saying hi. Namaste. That's so sweet. Heavenly experience is a choice and some work away. I'm not sure what the last part means, but I agree. Heavenly experience, how we, like she's saying, how we are responding.
Well, you can look out my window and see the dreary Seattle day here in Chicago. Or you can look at the lake and go, wow, all I see are rainbows in the reflection. I feel the crisp air because it's now fall, and there's a certain smell in Chicago when fall gets here. And it's here. And it's exciting. And I know snow is coming, not my favorite, although I have a husky and she's thrilled. I will learn to embrace snow because, again, invited to happy hour, grab a seat at the bar, raise your glass, and let's go. Because you know what I did last year? This will be an info. I live across from one of the snow hills as the lake in there, and it's a little bunny hill for little kids. And I got so annoyed because we got a lot of snow last year. So what I did is said, oh, the heck with this shoveling. This was doing it too much. I put on my snowsuit, and I asked one of the dads to borrow their little kid's thing, and I went zipping down the dam. They built moguls on this thing. How does a 5-year-old know about a mogul? And I went through there about 3 or 4 times and going, if you can't beat him, join him. So I built a snowman, and I went out the end. It was fabulous, but it was a choice. I could have stayed inside and crowded and done the whole Dr. Seuss thing right outside my window. I decided to suit up and have a ball, and the parents thought I was nuts, absolutely nuts. And they're like, I want whatever she's having. And I'm like, I was
Totally.
pure life. But that's always a choice in there. So go out and make someone's day. Go out and have it, even if it's just a little 5-minute bunny hill. The kids and I had a ball. I was 4 years old for half an hour. It was fabulous.
That's awesome. I love it. Oh, I love it. Well, we have about 3 minutes left. What is it? Is there anything else you want to share with our listeners? Do you want to share anything about your work, about how people can get in touch with you?
Oh, sure, I can do that. You can look at me online. You've got a lot of things. Just Dr. Cheryl Lentz. Matter of fact, I don't know if we have with the chat. We'll type it in there. But look at me online. I have my own YouTube channel. I have my own websites. I have my own publishing company. My YouTube. I tend to like my YouTube most of all, not just like my TED Talk, but the ability to simply connect with my students. That reminds me, I need to do one of these now. My point is being able to make someone's day. So this is the request of kindness that we've been talking about every single day, particularly if you're feeling lousy, make it about someone else. Remember, leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. So do something kind for someone. Put a nice note on their mailbox, rake their leaves, wave to them. They'll wonder what you're up to and what you're on, I swear, because people aren't kind enough. They're going to be really wondering, going, what is up with her? I love those looks. And they're like, how are you? I'm like, I'm fabulous. I'm like, nobody's fabulous. What are you on? Make their day, do something unusual. It will change you and it will change them. People will be talking about it all day. That's kindness. Pay it forward. Make the first step. That's really it. Is take the first step. You'll be amazed at how many people will follow you, and they'd follow you anywhere. So give them an excuse to follow you. I'm crazy. People know it. They just want to know what I'm up to. So come play in my arena. I love playing the sandbox. You never know what I'm up to.
I love that. I love what you said. I remember my mom when I was a nanny, she would I'd call her complaining about something and she's like, Abby, just ask how you can serve. And it got me over myself, and it was like, oh yeah, I can serve these kids and serve this
I'll
company.
give you the best advice I ever got, and it was a little hard to tell. Wait for it. Ready? It's not about you.
Yeah,
That's it. That's it in a nutshell. When you finally realize that nothing is about you, it's just the honor and privilege to serve. Once you see it that way, you realize that you get way more than you ever thought possible when you just choose to love and serve. It's that simple.
that's so beautiful. Oh my God, I love that. So with that, I'm going to plug oneheartglobal.co if that's okay. It's our nonprofit.
By all means, it's awesome.
For sure. Check that out. And then you can also go to lifeforceconnection.com to get activations there that are free and just really empower yourself to follow your intuition. We're so happy you're part of our community and here and just shining your light and being the love that you are. So we love to hear from you. You can email us at success@lifeforceconnection.com. Any emails I will forward to her because this is our show together and all of you contributed. So thank you so much. And we will see you next Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific. All right, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Bye.